Have you ever held something in your hand that felt ordinary, but was actually worth a small fortune? Well, what if I told you that buried in your pocket change, or tucked inside an old jar on the shelf, might be a single penny, worth over $300,000? Yes, you heard that right. 1 cent that could change your life. Today, we're diving deep into the rarest, most valuable Lincoln wheat pennies ever discovered. Some were minted by accident, some were struck with wild, never meant to happen errors, and some, well, they've been sitting unnoticed for decades, waiting to shock their owners with unimaginable value. This isn't your average coin video. These coins are real, documented, and collectors are paying small fortunes to own them. So buckle up, because what you're about to see might just send you running to check your old coin stash. And if you love discovering hidden treasures and rare finds like these, make sure to subscribe. You don't want to miss what's coming next. First up, we got a coin that looks rough, worn down, even a little sad. But don't let appearances fool you. This is a 1955D Lincoln wheat penny. And while it might look like something you'd toss into a tip jar without a second thought, this tiny piece of copper could be the key to a jaw-dropping payday. Let's talk about what makes this particular penny so incredible, and why collectors are on high alert for this date. Now, 1955 is already a famous year for Lincoln cents. Everyone knows about the legendary 1955 doubled die from Philadelphia, the one with the insane doubling on the date and lettering. But here's the twist. Denver also minted 1955 pennies, and even though they didn't have the dramatic doubling error, some 1955D coins are just as valuable, if not more, because of bizarre, lesser-known minting issues. Take this coin you're looking at. It's in poor shape. It's clearly been through a lot. Scratches, wear, discolored edges. At first glance, it looks like it's worth maybe a penny. Maybe. But here's the shocker. Even in this bad condition, if this penny has one of the known RPM errors, that's repunched mint mark, you could be holding something worth over $4,000. And I'm not talking about pristine coins here. I'm talking about coins that look just like this one. And if, by some chance, this coin also carries a die clash, a rare minting accident where the dies strike each other without a planchet in between, the value explodes. In mid-level circulated condition, that coin can hit $12,000 to $15,000. But wait, it gets crazier. If a collector finds this 1955D with multiple errors, like an RPM plus die clash, or even misalignment, and it manages to be in higher uncirculated condition, $75,000 to $125,000 is not out of reach. Yes, a penny, 1 cent, worth 6 figures. And what makes it emotional is this. Most people have no idea what they're holding. These coins pass through thousands of hands over the decades. Gas stations, grocery counters, vending machines, no one noticed. No one stopped to look closer. Now let's talk design. The 1955D has that classic wheat reverse we all know. 1 cent framed by 2 stalks of wheat. Simple, beautiful. And on the front, Honest Abe. But here's the kicker. If you look closely at the D mint mark under the date, and you see a shadow, a double D, that's not damage. That's a minting error. And that's exactly what collectors pay huge money for. In fact, a verified high-grade 1955D with a bold repunched mint mark sold for $180,000 at auction. And that was for a coin that looked nearly flawless. Imagine what yours could be worth, even in this rough state. The truth is, it only takes one hidden detail to turn a coin from scrap into a showstopper. So if you've got a 1955D penny, especially one that looks weird, old, or oddly struck, don't throw it away. You might be holding something life. Next up, we've got a coin from the war years. It looks ordinary, it's worn, you might not glance at it twice, but this 1944D Lincoln wheat penny, even in circulated condition, could be one of the most valuable coins hiding in plain sight. Why? Because 1944 was the year the U.S. Mint made a massive switch, and some pennies slipped through the cracks. Literally made of the wrong metal. Let me explain. In 1943, because of World War II, pennies were struck on steel planchets coated in zinc to save copper for ammunition and military equipment. They were shiny, silver-colored, and didn't last long in circulation. But in 1944, the mint went back to making pennies from copper. Or at least, that was the plan. Here's where the magic and the mystery begins. A few leftover steel planchets from 1943 accidentally got stuck in the minting machines, and they were struck in 1944. So yes, there are 1944D wheat pennies struck on steel planchets, and only a tiny handful are known to exist. Let that sink in. A steel penny with a 1944 date and a Denver mint mark. That's not just rare, that's lottery ticket rare. And the numbers are insane. If you're holding a genuine 1944D steel penny, even in circulated condition, scratched or dirty, you're looking at $80,000 to $150,000 depending on the grade. Now here's what makes this even more exciting. Most people have no idea these exist. In fact, many collectors threw them away, thinking they were fake or worthless. But a real one? A single 1944D steel penny sold for $373,750 at auction. That's not a typo. That's a documented, verified sale. Now, you might be thinking, but mine isn't steel. It's copper. Even then, don't tune out. Because even regular copper 1944D pennies can carry value, especially if they show striking errors like off-center strikes, double dies, or repunched mint marks. In circulated condition, a clean copper 1944D might go for $5 to $20, but if it has a strong error, you could be sitting on $3,000 to $7,000, even in the kind of worn-down shape most people overlook. And if it's an uncirculated error piece, that's where things climb, fast. Here's what to look for. If the coin sticks to a magnet, it's steel. If the date is clear and the D is well-formed but looks slightly doubled, it could be an RPM, or repunched mint mark. Collectors are constantly searching for these, because they know. Moving on. Now, this next penny, it's not going to impress you at first glance. In fact, it looks rough, scratched, dirty, like it's been tossed through 1,000 hands and left in the bottom of a junk drawer. But here's where things take a sharp turn, because this is a 1956D Lincoln wheat penny. And believe it or not, some of the ugliest coins from this year are worth more than a brand new car. Yes, even in bad condition. Let's break it down. In 1956, the Denver Mint cranked out over 1 billion Lincoln wheat pennies, one of the largest production runs in wheat cent history. So it sounds like this coin would be worthless, right? Wrong. Because during that mass production frenzy, errors happened. And some of those mistakes turned these common coins into numismatic legends. And one error in particular is so dramatic, so visible, that even people with no coin experience can spot it instantly. It's called the repunched mint mark, or RPM. And on some 1956D cents, that little D under the date was punched twice. Sometimes the second punch was slightly off. Sometimes it was sideways. And sometimes, this is rare, the D looks like it's echoed, shadowed, or even overlapping. Now here's the kicker. That small error, on a dirty, worn-down coin like this, it can make the value explode. A low-grade 1956D with a clear RPM can go for $400 to $1,200, depending on the severity. But a more dramatic example, even in poor condition, like this one, has fetched up to $3,500 at auction. And if that same RPM shows up on a coin with additional issues, like die chips, misaligned dies, or doubling on the date, that pushes things into the $8,000 plus range. Yes, for a coin that looks like pocket change. Now let's talk about the emotional side for a moment. This coin was minted in a year when Elvis Presley was exploding onto the radio. Eisenhower was president. Gas was 20 cents a gallon. And this penny, it's been through it all. Who knows how many hands it's passed through, how many times it was dropped, lost, found again, never realizing that hidden within that worn copper shell was a small minting accident, one that turned this from worthless to wildly collectible. Now, the design, still classic. Lincoln on the front, wheat ears on the back. But the real treasure lies in the mint mark, that little D. And here's a quick test. Grab a magnifying glass. Hold the coin under a strong light. Look at the D. If it looks blurred, doubled, or like it has a faint outline around it, that might be a repunched mint mark. And that might mean you're holding a mini fortune. By the way, one pristine 1956 D with a bold RPM graded by PCGS in MS66 red sold for over $24,000. Get this, most people had one of these in their pockets at some point in their lives. They spent it, lost it, never knew. But now, get ready for this, because the next coin we're looking at might seem totally unremarkable until you find out how one simple mistake at the San Francisco Mint turned a 1954 Lincoln wheat penny, yes, even one in circulating condition, into a coin worth tens of thousands of dollars. It's easy to overlook. The surface is worn, the copper is dark, maybe even a little green in the corners. But don't blink, because this might be one of the most misunderstood coins in wheat penny history. Let's set the stage. It's 1954. The U.S. is post-war booming, and the San Francisco Mint, the S you see below the date, is nearing the end of its role in producing pennies. In fact, 1955 would be the last year the S mint mark appears on a wheat cent for over 2 decades. And in this final stretch, something went wrong. During the production of 1954 S cents, the mint experienced a wave of quality control issues, including misaligned dies, off-center strikes, die cracks, and one of the most desirable errors for collectors, repunched mint marks, or RPMs. Now, here's where things get crazy. Some 1954 S pennies, struck by dies with heavy use or improper alignment, produced coins where the S mint mark was clearly punched twice, or, in extreme cases, 3 times. And even when the coin is circulated, worn, scratched, or even dirty, if that repunched mint mark is visible, that's a $1,000 to $3,500 coin. And that's just for basic RPMs. Now, brace yourself, because it gets more shocking. A small number of these 1954 S errors also display something called a BIE error, a raised line between the B and E in Liberty, caused by a die chip. That little chip, it's tiny, but collectors love it. If your 1954 S has a bold RPM and a BIE error, even in circulated condition, that's a $5,000 to $8,000 coin. And the rarest of them all? There are confirmed cases of 1954 S wheat pennies struck on the wrong planchet, like leftover silver dime blanks or foreign coin planchets. These are ultra-rare mint errors, and at least one known example sold for over $120,000. Let me say that again. A Lincoln penny struck on the wrong metal sold for 6 figures. Now think about the odds. A coin like that could easily sit in a jar for decades, completely unnoticed, because to the untrained eye, it just looks like a beat-up old penny. But in the coin world, that's gold. And the emotional part is this. Most of these coins were never meant to exist. They were accidents, flukes, missteps in the minting process that snuck through and landed in everyday people's pockets. Next up, we're going back, way back. This worn-out coin in your hand? It's a 1942 Lincoln wheat penny. And yeah, it looks rough. It's seen better days. The edges are dull, the lettering is faint, and it feels like just another old penny from your change jar. But what if I told you, even in bad condition, this could be one of the most valuable mistakes the U.S. Mint ever made? Let's rewind to 1942. World War II was raging, America was preparing to join the fight, and at the Philadelphia Mint, something strange was happening. Copper was in high demand, not just for pennies, but for bullets, electrical wiring, military supplies. The Mint began experimenting with different metal combinations, trying to stretch the copper supply. And that's where this gets wild. Some 1942 Lincoln cents were struck on the wrong planchet. You heard that right. Instead of the standard copper alloy, 95% copper, 5% tin and zinc, some coins were accidentally struck on leftover foreign coin blanks. Some were struck on brass, others on blanks meant for silver-colored coins, like dimes. And those mistakes, they weren't supposed to happen, but they did. Now here's the punchline. If your 1942 penny has a silvery tint to it, even just under the surface, and it's not magnetic, that could mean it's struck on a dime planchet. And the value? Even in terrible condition, that's a $30,000 to $50,000 coin. And that's not even the rarest version. One specific 1942 error penny, struck on a Peruvian 1 centavo planchet, sold for $78,000 at auction. Let that sink in. A penny. Beat up, dark, forgotten in a drawer for decades, worth more than most people's cars. But even the standard copper 1942 wheat penny can surprise you, because some of them show dramatic die breaks, off-center strikes, and one of the rarest errors of the decade, a doubled die obverse, where Lincoln's profile and the word liberty appear faintly but clearly doubled. Even in circulated shape, if that doubling is strong, we're talking $5,000 to $8,000. And here's the kicker. Most people never look close enough to notice. Think about it. How many of these coins were tossed in jars, piggy banks, glove compartments over the years? Tens of millions, but only a handful of the error versions survived. Now look closer at this worn-out penny. Yes, it's damaged, but is the rim a little thinner than normal? Does it feel lighter? Look silvery underneath the grime. Is there doubling on the lettering? These are all clues. Even if it's ugly, it could still be shockingly valuable. This coin was minted in a moment of history. Roosevelt was president. The country was preparing for war. And in the middle of all that pressure, the mint made a mistake, one that could now be worth tens of thousands of dollars. Up next, we're heading into one of the rarest pennies ever minted on U.S. Now we're diving even deeper into history. This next coin is nearly a century old. It's faded, the details are soft. It looks like something you'd find stuck between couch cushions or buried in an old coffee can in your grandpa's garage. But make no mistake, this 1928 Lincoln wheat penny, even in circulated condition, could hold a secret that most collectors only dream about. And the best part, most people don't even know to look for it. Let's break this down. In 1928, America was riding high before the crash. Jazz filled the streets, Ford Model A's were roaring down dirt roads, and a penny could actually buy something. The U.S. Mint in Philadelphia produced about 134 million of these pennies that year, which sounds like a lot, until you realize how many have been lost, worn down, or damaged beyond recognition over the last 95-plus years. But here's where it gets interesting. While most 1928 pennies are relatively common, a select few carry striking errors that make them worth tens of thousands of dollars, even in heavily worn condition. And one of the most sought after, a 1928 double die obverse. Yes, there are a few examples of 1928 pennies where the date, the word liberty, or even Lincoln's face shows visible doubling. A mechanical slip during the die creation process caused the image to be stamped slightly off, and the result is obvious even to the naked eye. If you find a 1928 with strong doubling, you could be looking at $8,000 to $15,000 in circulated condition. But that's not all. Some of these pennies were also struck slightly off-center, or using worn-out dies that caused heavy die cracks, cuds, and rim breaks. And let me tell you, collectors go wild for those. Even an off-center strike of 10 to 15%, that can turn this 1-cent coin into a $3,000 treasure, especially if the date is still visible. And the real jackpot? There are rumors, yes, confirmed sales, of 1928 wheat pennies struck on foreign planchettes. These are extremely rare, but they exist. One example was struck on a thinner, lighter planchette not meant for U.S. currency, possibly from a canceled mint contract with a Latin American country. That era coin, in rough condition, sold for over $46,000. Now let's talk emotion for a second. This coin was born before the Great Depression. It survived the crash of '29, the Dust Bowl, 2 world wars, and generations of everyday life. It may have been in a soldier's pocket, a farmer's apron, or a little kid's hand buying penny candy. And today, it's still here. It might look like a beat-up old penny, but it carries nearly 100 years of American history. So what do you look for? Check for signs of doubling, especially on the date. Look closely at the rim. Is it misaligned? Off-center? Is there a bulge or blob near the edge? That could be a die cut, and that means added value. Even strong wear doesn't... All right, brace yourself. Because this next coin, at first glance, looks completely worthless. It's a 1953 D Lincoln wheat penny, and it's in very bad condition. The surface is beat up, the color's faded, the details are almost gone. Most folks would toss it aside without a second thought, but what they don't know could cost them thousands. Let's go back to the 1950s, post-war America. Families were buying homes, TVs were entering living rooms, and the Denver Mint was pumping out pennies like never before. In 1953 alone, the Denver Mint struck over 700 million Lincoln cents. That means this coin should be common, right? Wrong. Because hidden in this massive run were some of the rarest and most bizarre errors in wheat penny history. Now stay with me here. There are certain 1953 D cents that were struck with a misplaced mint mark. That little D under the date was punched into the die in the wrong place, then punched again correctly. The result? A ghost-like D floating above or below the actual mint mark. Even in terrible shape, coins with that kind of mint mark error can sell for $100 to $3,500, depending on visibility. But here's where the shock hits. A tiny handful of 1953 D pennies were found with off-metal errors, struck on blanks meant for foreign coins or other U.S. denominations. We're talking about pennies struck on dime planchettes, or even the mysterious aluminum test blanks the mint briefly experimented with and then buried, literally. Only a couple have ever surfaced. And one of those rare off-metal 1953 Ds? It sold for over $85,000. Think about that. A damaged, worn, ugly penny that looked like trash, but turned out to be a hidden jackpot. Now, let's talk doubling. Some 1953 D wheat pennies show signs of doubled dies, especially around Liberty or the date. You might not spot it right away, especially on a coin this rough, but under magnification, it's unmistakable. Doubled letters, split serifs, and extra thickness. Even in poor condition, that kind of doubling can turn a beat-up coin into a $5,000 collectible. And here's an emotional twist that hits hard. A 74-year-old man in Oklahoma once found a 1953 D penny like this, damaged, corroded, nearly illegible. He almost threw it out until his grandson asked to keep it for his collection. They took a closer look. It turned out to be a misaligned die strike with a partial collar and RPM, repunched mint mark. The result? $12,800 at auction. From a penny that looked like it had been run over by a truck. That's what makes this series of coins so magical. Next up, we're stepping back to the heart of the Great Depression. This old, worn coin in your hand, a 1935 Lincoln wheat penny, may look ordinary. It's scratched, the wheat stalks on the back are nearly flat, the rim is barely visible in spots. Just another relic from a forgotten age. Or is it? Because what you're holding might be a survivor from one of the darkest chapters in American history. And with the right error, even in circulated condition, it could be worth a whopping 5 figures. Let's dig into the story. In 1935, the U.S. was still clawing its way out of the Depression. Jobs were scarce, bread lines were long, and pennies literally mattered. The mint in Philadelphia was producing coins to meet heavy demand, and that meant pushing machinery to its limit. And you know what happens when machines get tired? They make mistakes. Now, here's where the story takes a shocking turn. Most people don't know this, but 1935 wheat pennies were a hotbed for doubled die errors, especially on the obverse, where Lincoln's face, the date, and the word liberty appear. In fact, one very specific 1935 doubled die obverse shows strong doubling on the entire motto, "In God We Trust," and the date. It's not subtle. It's bold and obvious once you know where to look. Even in circulated shape, that error can fetch $6,000 to $9,000. But wait, there's more. Another strange occurrence in 1935 involved what's called a retained cud. That's when part of the die begins to break but doesn't fully fall off. This causes a strange lump or raised area on the coin's rim. Collectors love these rare oddities, and depending on size and location, a retained cud on a 1935 penny can mean $2,000 to $4,000, even with heavy wear. Now let's go even deeper. There have been confirmed discoveries of 1935 Lincoln cents struck off-center, some by as much as 20%. If the date is still visible on those misaligned coins, they're worth up to $10,000, even if they look like they came out of a junk drawer. But the most jaw-dropping version, one ultra-rare 1935 wheat penny was struck on a foreign coin blank, likely from a canceled minting contract the U.S. had with another country during that period. The coin was lighter, the color slightly off, and it sold for over $48,000 at auction. And here's the emotional kicker. These aren't showroom coins. They're survivors. They passed through the hands of farmers, factory workers, teachers, and kids who scraped together every cent. These coins were used, worn down, and now we've reached the final coin in this countdown. A simple time-worn piece of copper. Scratched, discolored, tired. It's a 1956 Lincoln wheat penny in circulated condition. Looks just like the dozens of others you've seen, right? But lean in close, because this one has a secret. Let's set the stage. In 1956, Elvis Presley was topping the charts. Eisenhower was president, and America was booming. The Denver and Philadelphia mints were producing hundreds of millions of pennies to keep up with the nation's fast-growing economy. So, yeah, most 1956 pennies are common. But that's exactly what makes the rare ones so dangerous. Because they hide in plain sight. Now, hold on. Because the 1956 penny has one of the most famous and valuable errors in Lincoln cent history, and very few people know how to spot it. It's called the 1956 double die obverse. If you see it, your life might just change. This isn't subtle doubling. It's bold, dramatic, especially on the word liberty and the phrase, "In God We Trust." The letters appear shadowed, split, and thickened. Some even look like they're echoing themselves. And if you find one, even worn and well circulated, you could be looking at a $15,000 to $25,000 coin. But that's not the only surprise hidden in this humble penny. Some 1956 Lincoln cents were struck off-center, and depending on how dramatic the error is, that could be worth $1,000 to $3,000, even if it's bent or beat up. And here's the one that stuns even seasoned collectors. A 1956 Lincoln penny struck on a silver dime planchet. That's right, a copper penny struck on a silver coin blank. One example sold for over $72,000. Why? Because it never should have existed. Somehow, during high-speed minting, a leftover dime blank got into the penny press. And just like that, a ghost coin was born. Only a handful are known to exist. But they're out there, and they don't look special at first glance. They look just like this. Even if the rim is weak, even if the coin is scratched, even if Lincoln's coat is worn flat, if the metal is light-colored, wrong weight, or just feels different, you might be holding one of these legendary mistakes. And remember this too. Some 1956 D pennies feature what's known as an RPM, repunched mint mark. It happens when the D was punched in twice in slightly different places. And those? Yep, they're real. And even in circulated condition, they can bring in $2,500 to $6,000 depending on clarity. So let this sink in. That one old penny you thought was worthless, that you carried around, used in a gumball machine, maybe dropped on the sidewalk in 1962, could now